you better have a stealth mode, or it doesn't make sense to come out with it immediately unless you have a really clear process around it.
Welcome everyone to UpTech Report. This is our Founder's Journey series. This is sponsored by TerraLeap. Learn how to leverage the power of video at terraleap.io. I'm excited to be joined again by my guest, Lodewijk Bogaards, who's based in Amsterdam, Netherlands, CTO and co-founder of StackState. Definitely check out part one of our discussion where he kind of dive deep into StackState and the role that they're playing in today's interesting world. Well, there's so many technologies, and if you're having to manage the overall, whether you're information operations leader or site reliability engineer, as they're being called today, this is a powerful tool to see the entire topology, all of those technologies in one place. But now I want to hear more about your journey, Lodewijk, of how did you get to where you are today, and maybe a few lessons learned. But tell me more about your story, even before StackState. How'd you get to where you are?
Oh man, how far do you want to go?
All the way back, like, why did you get into technology in the first place?
Well, my dad is a computer scientist, so that was, there were always computers around the house. And even though I wanted to play games, he said that, well, you can play games, but you're gonna do it on a PC. And I wanted, a Nintendo, and then I wanted an Amiga, Commodore, and I never got these machines, So when I wanted to play the games, I had to actually configure config.sys and autoexec.bat, to make sure that I had just enough high memory free so that I could play that game. And then, of course, at some point, that became the more interesting part than actually playing games.
From there, you started to be an engineer at different. I know that's how, kind of like how you led to StackState. You were developing and seeing the problem inside. Did you know you always wanted to run your own business, or was that just kind of happenstance in the end?
No, I knew that. Yeah, it was actually interesting because when I was in my previous job, I felt always a bit stuck. I had many ideas that I wanted to try, but I never really had time to try it. Actually, I told in part one that one of those ideas I had an intern to try it, but of course I wanted to do it myself. But I was busy doing what was considered the important stuff. And my girlfriend at the time, she was actually working with students who were looking at their career path, and so she was working with me as well. And I said that, well, I would like to be a CTO of a very cool company. And I actually set that as a goal for myself. And I thought, well, maybe in 10 years or so, I'll get there. And about a year later, I was there. So
As a year later, so as soon as you set I think I want to do this, then it was able to come into reality.
I'm not a big believer of the law of attraction and, the secret and all that, but it did turn out that way. So who knows?
So it was about coming up on 6 years ago that you started. If you could tell yourself one thing, if you knew one thing that you know now 6 years ago, what would that be?
Become very obsessed with the particular use case that you're trying to solve.
Can you expand on that for me of why that is the one you chose?
Well, I'm an engineer and I like science and mathematics and these kinds of topics, and it's very easy to go off into an abstract world and fix abstract problems without actually going the extra mile to make a product and say, well, here's a nice engine, and it takes a lot to build a product, and going that extra mile is completely worth it, and making sure that you actually solve the use case is the important part there. And so especially in the beginning, I've been too easy with that, where here's a thing that can solve all things, but what is it that you're actually trying to solve? And so yeah, that's been a mistake of mine.
In that development of the product itself, what lessons learned would you say of being able to reduce the time to market, of being able to bring a product out and being able to say it's ready and for sale?
So the question is, what reduces the time to market?
Yeah, what lessons learned of being able to bring a product to market faster when you're developing it?
Well, I think that in our case, we should have brought it, we should have not focused on bringing it to market that fast. And then we would have brought it to market faster. Because what we actually set out to do was a very hard thing. So we said that, we need to have a graph that actually can deal with time in a very efficient way. So let's build a version graph database. And these are very hard problems. I mean, there's companies that just do only that, and they spent years and years on that. And we actually did that while trying to go to market straight from the beginning. And I think we should have kept a kind of stealth mode for much longer, and until we really felt comfortable that now we have something that we can go to market with, then we should have gone, instead of actually trying to go too fast. So yeah, and I understand it's contradictory. It seems contradictory with what I just said, but both of these things are very important.
So being able to come to market faster actually means to develop a little bit slower, so you know what actually is being solved and the problem that it's meeting, and not
Yeah,
trying to bite off too much.
yeah, because otherwise, if you go too fast and you go out and you give a user something, now it's out there, so you have to maintain backwards compatibility, and if you then it becomes a redesign to redo it, and then the time to change it is much longer. And sometimes I knew at that time also, like, hey, it's not ready, but we were in this incredible push to just bring this to market, bring this to market, bring this to market. And I believe that if we would have said that, no, let's just stay in stealth mode for about 2 years, which is, if I look back now, 2 years would have been a really good period. We would have been much stronger the moment that we actually came out with the product.
Now, being able to accomplish any of this, it's powerful and helpful to have a good co-founder. How did you and Mark meet, and how did that happen?
Well, we met on the job. So I didn't know him before. He was a consultant at Xebia, which is a consultancy company in the Netherlands and also worldwide, actually. Yeah, so that's it, actually.
And how did you know that you made the decision to say this would be a good guy to partner up with and start a company?
Yeah, I don't think I actually ever made that decision. I think I, I was
Just
just
naturally happened.
yeah, just it was the excitement for what we were building and the problem that we were tackling, kind of the size and scope of it. And I think that that's what drives us both. And we're super different people. Like, we couldn't be much more different. Like, I'm a vegan, he's a meat eater. It's like that kind of and but at the same time we get along very, very nicely. And I think also some of the strength of the company comes from the fact that we're so different.
You complement each other very well.
Yeah.
Now, when you were beginning, at what point did you bring in funding to be able to make that happen? Early on, or how long did you bootstrap?
Yeah, that was very, very early on, because Xebia, the consultancy company that we worked for, actually invested in us. And we saw that they said that, well, we actually pitched it to them, and we were like, well, if they don't want it, we're going to get money somewhere else, because we're going to do this no matter what. So, but we first pitched it to them, and they said that, well, talk to these guys, and if they like it, then try and see if you can get some customers even before. And if you can actually prove you can get customers, then it's probably a good idea. And so we did a couple of sales calls, and within no time we had customers. So that's also where this kind of the problem of not having a stealth mode came from. We had customers from day one. And all we had was like a bunch of kind of lines of code, not very far from a product. And now all of a sudden you have customers.
pros and cons there of effectively customer funded, because people are ready to give you money if you could solve it. So that means you have funding through that, or can even get more funding. But it's, you said the other side of it is then you're developing a product faster, and you may not actually want to go all that far. Rather, you're not really honing in on where the problem you want to solve.
I guess also it matters, how complex a product you're building. Like if you're going to build the next operating system to defeat Microsoft at their own game or something like that, Microsoft and Apple, you better have a stealth mode, or it doesn't make sense to come out with it immediately, unless you have a really clear process around it. But trying to actually become cash positive on a few lines of code doesn't make any sense. So you're going to spend a bunch of time doing the wrong things.
Have you seen competitors then come up, and how have you kind of managed that as far as the product development?
Yeah, sure. We have seen some competitors come up, but they were bought actually, and then they kind of tapered off, I guess. Like you get bought by a big old enterprise, and then they run these companies in the ground. Somehow the founders are not interested anymore. They leave, and well, it's interesting technology, but didn't make it. And I believe we had the discussion not too long ago, like who are our competitors? And of course, we can name a whole list of vendors that we meet when we do POCs and compete for RFIs, but we essentially don't have competitors in the strategy that we are applying. So
from the way you're approaching the problem, no one else is approaching it in that way. If anything, then it's just a marketing and sales concern of how to make sure that it comes across and communicated that it's a different approach and it's apples to oranges.
Yeah, it's very hard. And indeed, like the apples to oranges, I actually had that discussion last week, and I even used that analogy. So I was even Googling the different types of apples and so on.
So, I like it.
But that's a big challenge, yeah. How to market that. When you get the time to explain it to people, they understand it pretty quickly. But to give it to them in a one-liner, like, it takes 7 seconds to lose a customer, but it also takes 7 seconds to explain the product, apparently. And so try and explain StackState in 7 seconds is a hard problem. And it's a lot easier if you can say, well, it's like this and this and this. But, if you're not like this and this and this, then you're going to have to use, longer sentences, and then people's attention spans are short. So including mine.
as all are. Your original focus and area has definitely been Europe, but you've been expanding now to the United States and elsewhere. There's unique challenges in that of culture and being able to, in communication. Anything you can share for another company who is looking at doing the same thing that you can provide any insight?
Well, two things I would say that we met as challenges in the US. One is the competition is much fiercer. And as a European company, it's pretty hard if you're not there. Well, you're dealing with competition and they're just around the corner, and and especially now in these days when it's COVID, it's not very easy for me to travel to the US. So that's been a tough challenge. And the other thing is the scale. So where, we're talking to banks here in the Netherlands, and, banks are large systems, but if you're talking to, say, Goldman Sachs or JP Morgan or something, then, their smallest business unit is, can be a medium-sized bank in the Netherlands, so that's, that's another type of challenge. And it's also, you have to know at what point you're really ready to take on such a Goliath. So you can be too early, spend a whole bunch of time trying to, as David tried to fight with Goliath, But you have to know what size you are and what you're able to handle.
On that very note, I mean, building a business on Goliath is both good and bad. And any recommendations or insights you can share for others who are looking at whether going for mid-market, to enterprise, or Goliath, just any other insights you can share on that.
Well, if I would do it again, I wouldn't start with a solution that's really best suited for Goliaths. I mean, that's a very tough road to take. We took that road, and we only got so far because what we actually came up with actually works. So, but it's still a very tough road to take. So I would, if in my next startup, which for sure is going to come around at some point, I'd like to not start with the Goliaths, because those can be, it's very frustrating when you're a small young company, lots of energy, lots of goodwill, lots of people who are willing to work 24 hours, and then you have to deal with some guy who is unwilling to just change the firewall rules so that you can reach that API. So I'd not do it again, but nevertheless, it's well worth the journey.
For you, growing as a CTO and as a leader, any books, audiobooks, podcasts, blogs that you would recommend that you have found interesting and would suggest others to look at?
Well, I like to listen to Lex Friedman. He has a very interesting podcast and interesting people on his show. I like Cosmic Skeptic as well. He's a very interesting philosophical character from the UK. Smart guy. Well, I'm a bit of a Buddhist slash, not that I'm really into anything supernatural, but I like meditation a lot. So Thich Nhat Hanh, Old Paths, White Clouds is very nice. And also Hermann Hesse's book, Siddhartha. Those books, those are the kinds of things that I enjoy. Yeah.
Nice. For last question I have for you, Lodewijk, is what kind of tech innovations do you predict we will see in the near term, the next year or two, and long term, 5-10 years from now?
Well, the long term, I'm very interested in independent type theory, and I think that we're going to see much more of that. And I'm a bit of a programming language enthusiast, and there's a programming language called Idris or Idris. I don't know what the correct pronunciation is. And that's a programming language that includes dependent types. What it makes possible is for you to have a formal mathematical proof of the program that you're writing. So what we are doing now in software engineering is you build some software and then you write a whole bunch of different tests on that software. But those tests are not proving that it works under all conditions. It just proves that, if you feed it A and B, it will produce C. But, if you feed it B and A, then you also have to provide that. So while in mathematics, you say, okay, it has to commute, and then it always commutes, not just for A and B and A, but for anything. And I like those. I think that's the future of software engineering. And combine that with AI, I think there's a lot to be done there, because once you get to types that are so specific and programs that are so solid that once it compiles, it actually will never break, it becomes also less possible to even write the wrong code. And what you can see, for example, in a language like Idris is where you've written all these proofs and now you set up the function signature of the function that you're going to write, and you can actually press a hotkey and the code is actually generated, because at that point they're so there's so few options of what you could actually do, what is correct to do, that the code actually automatically rolls out. And for me, it's very interesting when you overlap that with what the kind of the latest in AI is, and look at transformer model based models like GPT-3. Combine that with the dependent types. I think we're going to be seeing some of that, and computers programming themselves, of course, is just the first step to artificial general intelligence. So very interesting stuff.
And if anything, the immediate use case is just much faster development. Is that what that future basically means? Is you be able to write code faster and build things faster?
Well, bug-free code, basically. Might not be, in the end, you'll be faster. But right now, the state of the art is there that if you want to write such code that is guaranteed to be bug-free, which there's some caveats there on the, what does it mean bug-free, but, just for sake of argument, to say, well, I'm going to write some code that is guaranteed to be bug-free. You can write, let's say, 1,000 lines of code. Then you have to write maybe 10,000 lines of proofs. And, those proofs are also much harder to write. So that's going to cost you a lot, kind of NASA quality software. And so right now, the state of the art is not there yet that it is pragmatic to actually do it that way. But it's going to come there. This time to actually provide those formal proofs is going to come down over time. And in time, we're going to see software that is perfect in the sense that it's mathematically proven and completely reducible back to the axioms that we have set in on which we can build the entire foundation of mathematics. And so, that's very exciting.
I love to hear a CTO's excitement. For you, it's kind of this is a quiet excitement that seems to be like this is going to be really cool. And everyone who's not into technology is like it probably doesn't understand the impact of it, but it's theirs for sure.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Lodewijk, for sharing both your prediction of where we're headed, as well as the insights and lessons learned that you've had over these years. For those that want to learn more about StackState, make sure you go check out part 1 to hear our first part of the interview, or go to stackstate.com to get a demo and see how their product works. Thanks again for joining us, everyone. Our sponsor for today's episode is Terraleap. If your company wants to learn how to better leverage the power of video to increase sales and marketing results, head over to terraleap.io and learn about the new product customer stories. Thanks, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Have you seen a company using AI, machine learning, or other technology to transform the way we live, work, and do business? Go to uptechreport.com and let us know.